The sun beat down hard on the cracked earth of Dusty Hollow, where a crowd had gathered in the town square. It wasn't Sunday service or a rodeo that brought them here, it was something darker. Up on a wooden platform stood 3 young girls, dirty, scared, and silent. The oldest, Clara, no more than 14, kept her arms around the younger 2, Ellie, just 10, and little Ruth, barely 5 and still clutching a torn cloth rabbit. Beside them stood their stepmother, Edna Raleigh, sharp-faced, mean-spirited, and drunk by mid-morning. She wore a dress too fine for her character and clutched a half-empty bottle of corn whiskey in one hand while collecting bids with the other. 3 strong girls, folks, she hollered. They eat little, cry less, and they'll work hard once they're broken in. Laughter rolled from the crowd like tumbleweed. Some of the men nodded, some just spit and stared. One rancher shouted, $10 for the lot. Another countered with 15, chuckling. The auctioneer, a greasy little man named Stubby Clark, banged his gavel. We start at 10, we got 15, do I hear 20? 25. The bidding climbed. The girls trembled. Clara kept her eyes down, jaw clenched. She wasn't crying, not yet, but her little sisters were. Then came a sound like thunder. Not from the sky, but from the heavy boots of a man stepping out of the saloon's shadow. He wore a wide-brimmed black hat, dust-covered duster, and spurs that didn't jingle so much as growl with each step. Colt Branson. People went quiet, even Stubby lost his voice. Colt walked slow, like time itself bowed to him. He didn't say a word. He didn't look at the girls, or at the stepmother, not at first. He walked right up to the platform, tossed a heavy leather sack at Edna's feet with a metallic thud. $30 silver, he said, voice low and raw. That's not a bid, that's payment. The girls come with me. Edna blinked, staggered back a step. Now hold on, you sold them, he growled. Now they're mine, or we can do this another way. The crowd leaned in. Nobody laughed now. Colt didn't raise his voice, didn't reach for the 6-shooter on his hip. He didn't need to. Edna scowled, looked around for help. Found none. Her hand shook as she picked up the sack. Colt turned to the girls, tipped his hat to them like they were royalty. Let's go, girls. Clara hesitated for just a second, then stepped down off the platform. Ellie and Ruth followed, eyes wide. Colt didn't take their hands. He didn't need to. He walked ahead, and they followed. The crowd watched them disappear down the street in silence. Nobody ever tried to buy a child in Dusty Hollow again. The journey out of Dusty Hollow was long and silent. The sun had dipped low, casting a molten orange across the plains. Colt rode his tall buckskin horse ahead, while Clara held Ellie and Ruth tight in the back of the wagon, their eyes darting between the open land and the broad back of the stranger who'd bought them. They didn't speak at first. After what they'd just come from, words seemed fragile, useless. Ruth finally fell asleep against Clara's shoulder, thumb in her mouth, her little stuffed rabbit limp in her lap. Ellie sat with her knees pulled up, eyes wide but saying nothing. Clara just kept watch. On the land, on Colt, on the road. She was too old for her years and knew better than to trust a man just because he hadn't raised a hand. Colt didn't talk much. When the wagon wheel hit a rock, he slowed. When the wind picked up, he threw back a spare blanket. He didn't ask their names. Didn't ask about their past. He just kept riding, like the land belonged to him, like time didn't matter. When they finally reached his ranch, a small, weather-worn homestead nestled between scrub pines and red rock, the stars were already hanging low and bright in the sky. He pulled the wagon to a stop outside a log cabin with a wide porch and a fire still smoldering inside. A few cows lowed in the distance, and the night air was filled with the scent of cedar smoke and horse sweat. He dismounted with a quiet grunt, then offered his hand to Clara. She stared at it, then, slowly, took it. Her palm was rough from work, but his was rougher. Solid, real. You girls stay inside, he said, voice low but firm. Beds ain't fancy, but they're clean. Food's on the stove. They stepped through the creaky door into warmth and quiet. A stew pot simmered on the hearth, the scent of onion and rabbit filling the small space. 3 iron-framed beds lined one wall, each with folded quilts at the foot. Clara helped her sisters wash up and eat, then tucked them into the beds like she'd done 1,000 times before in 100 different places. She didn't sleep. She sat up in the chair by the fire, watching, listening. Waiting. Colt didn't come inside. He slept in the barn. Next morning, the girls woke to find 3 tin cups of warm milk waiting by the fire and a note scrawled in rough, blocky handwriting on a torn piece of feed sack. You're safe now. Breakfast's outside. From then on, things changed slowly. Colt didn't force their trust. He gave them space and time. Clara learned to ride on a chestnut mare named Junebug, who was gentle but stubborn. Colt taught her how to guide with her knees, how to speak low and calm to the horse when it got skittish. Ellie followed, always a step behind Clara, and took to the saddle like she was born in one. When Colt found her balancing a stick like a rifle, aiming at fence posts, he handed her a real one, not loaded, but not a toy either, and taught her how to hold it, respect it. Little Ruth stayed close to the porch at first, digging in the dirt and planting wildflower seeds Colt had brought back from town. She named each bloom after someone she'd lost. Her mother, her father, the dog that died before the stepmother came. One day, Clara asked him, "Why'd you take us?" Colt didn't look up from the saddle he was mending. He just said, "Because no one else did." After that, she stopped watching him with suspicion. She started watching him with wonder. By the time summer came, Colt Branson wasn't just a cowboy with a dark past anymore. He was a man who mended broken fences, raised wild girls into strong ones, and never asked for thanks. The people in town started to whisper things. Not about the girls, about him. They said the coldest heart in the West had gone soft. They didn't know the half of it. It began with smoke. A thin black column rising above the trees at the edge of the property, just as the sun was setting. Colt saw it first while stacking firewood, his eyes narrowing to slits. The smell hit next. Acrid, sharp, wrong. Inside the cabin, Clara was setting the table. Ellie was brushing Ruth's hair by the fire. They didn't notice at first. Colt strode in, quiet but fast. "Out the back," he said, grabbing his rifle from the wall. Clara froze. "What is it?" "Fire," he said, loading shells with practiced hands. "Go now. Take the trail to the creek. Hide there." But, he looked at her then, just for a moment. The look didn't ask, it told. Clara nodded. She scooped up Ruth while Ellie grabbed the small pack they kept by the door, just in case. Colt pushed open the back door, looked once at the hills, then disappeared into the night like a shadow. The barn was half in flames by the time he got there. The horses had already been let out, he could tell by the open gate. This wasn't just fire, it was a message, and Colt Branson didn't take kindly to messages. From the brush beyond the barn, figures moved. 6, maybe more. One stepped forward, tall, heavy-set, wearing a red bandana over a grinning face. Bert, the Blade, Halderman. Colt knew him from another life, a time when men like them rode together under no laws but their own. But that was years ago, before Colt gave it up, before he walked away from the blood and the gold and the fire. Halderman hadn't forgiven him for that. "You always did like playin' hero, Branson," Bert called out. "Heard you went soft, adoptin' little girls now." "That true." Colt stepped from behind the water trough, rifle raised. "Get off my land." "Can't do that." Bert's voice dripped with amusement. "See, them girls, turns out their pa left a stash somewhere. Ain't mine, ain't yours, but I figure they know where it is. I came to collect." Colt didn't respond, he just pulled the trigger. The first shot split the night. One of Bert's men fell back with a scream. The rest scattered for cover, but Colt was already moving. He dropped behind a barrel, fired twice more. Another man down. The fire lit the sky now, casting long shadows over the battlefield. The land echoed with gunfire and shouts. Colt was outnumbered, outgunned, but not outmatched. He moved like a storm. Every shot counted, every step was measured. He wasn't just defending land. He was defending what little good he'd built in a lifetime of regret. From the trees above, Clara watched, her arms wrapped around Ruth, her lips pressed into Ellie's ear. "Stay quiet, don't move." Ellie's eyes were wide, full of fear, but also something harder. Resolve. 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes of thunder, flame, and death. When the sheriff arrived with a posse from town, drawn by the fire and the shots, they found 5 men dead, 2 wounded and groaning in the dirt. And Bert Halderman, he was tied to a fence post with a broken jaw and a note pinned to his chest. Thief, liar, child seller. Colt stood over him, bruised and bleeding, hat in hand. One of the deputies spat. "You do all this alone." Colt shrugged. "They came for something that wasn't theirs." The sheriff looked at the smoldering barn, then at the girls in the trees, now cautiously walking down to him with dirt on their faces and fire in their eyes. "You all right, girls?" Clara nodded. "We are now." By the next morning, word had spread like prairie fire. All across the territory, from Laramie to Santa Fe, people were talking. Not just about the gunfight, but about what led to it. A cowboy who didn't run from trouble. A man who defended 3 orphan girls like they were blood. The West had seen killers and thieves, lawmen and outlaws. But it had never seen a man quite like Colt Branson. 1 year later, the ranch looked nothing like it had before. Where scorched wood once smoldered, a new barn now stood tall, built with the help of neighbors who never would have set foot on Colt Branson's land just a year earlier. The fences were mended, the house painted a soft dusty blue, and the fields were full of wildflowers planted by the smallest set of hands. The town of Dusty Hollow had changed, too. People walked with a bit more pride, a little less fear. Children played in the streets again. The sheriff still talked about the night Colt Branson took down an entire gang to protect 3 girls who weren't even his blood. It became the kind of story that made folks sit straighter when telling it, part myth, part truth, all legend. On the porch of the ranch house, Colt sat in a rocking chair, boots up, whittling a piece of cedar with a slow, steady hand. His hat rested low over his eyes, but he wasn't sleeping. He never really slept anymore, just rested between memories. Out in the yard, Clara ran the ledger at a makeshift table, flipping through pages with the sharp eye of a banker. She'd turned 15 and was already known in town as the smartest head for numbers anyone had seen. She paid the ranch hands fair, organized the supply runs, and kept the books so clean the bank once accused her of cheating, until she explained every column from memory. Ellie was 13 now, and faster on a horse than most grown men. She carried a slingshot on her hip but preferred the rifle Colt had finally let her keep. She could split a bottle at 50 paces and still get home in time to milk the goats. When she wasn't riding, she trained other girls in town how to shoot. A few boys came, too, when they could swallow their pride. And little Ruth, she turned 6 that spring. She had a patch of earth all her own near the front of the house, where she grew daisies, poppies, and some odd blue flower that no one could name. She named each one after people she wanted to remember. Every morning, she sang to them in a whisper, and every evening, Colt brought her a bucket of fresh water without being asked. Visitors started arriving from nearby towns. Widows, orphans, runaways. Not many, but enough. Folks who had nowhere else to go but had heard about a place where no one asked questions and everyone pulled their weight. Colt never turned them away. He built bunks in the barn, cleared more land, added beds to the house. The sign at the end of the long dirt road was new, carved by Ellie and painted by Clara. It read, "Branson Ranch and Home for the Lost," and hanging under it, scorched into an old pine plank, "Family ain't always born. Sometimes, it's fought for." People talked about it in every saloon, trading post, and churchyard from Texas to Montana. Some said Colt Branson had lost his mind. Others said he'd found his soul. A few claimed he was building an army. But most just tipped their hats and said, "That man's doing what the law never could." One afternoon, a young deputy rode up to deliver a letter from the governor. It was an official pardon, full absolution for crimes Colt had committed in his younger, bloodier years. The deputy handed it to him like it was gold. Colt looked at it for a long moment, then set it down beside him on the porch. Didn't even open it. "Governor says you're a free man now," the deputy said. Colt didn't look up. "I've been free since the day I brought them girls home." The deputy tipped his hat, nodded, and rode off. As dusk settled over the plains, Clara lit the lanterns. Ellie sharpened her knives. Ruth chased fireflies through the grass. And Colt Branson rocked slowly in his chair, watching the horizon. No one knew what tomorrow would bring. But everyone in the West knew one thing for sure. If you came for the innocent, if you preyed on the weak, if you brought trouble to the home he'd built from ash and memory, you'd have to face the man who turned rage into purpose and blood into legacy.